move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Australians rely on the government to confidently and competently advocate for our national interest. But yesterday, the Trade Minister seemed to be hallucinating on national TV when he invented a conversation between the US President and the Prime Minister about beef. How can Labor be trusted to secure tariff exemptions when the Trade Minister confuses a public statement from the President with a leader-to-leader phone call that never happened?
Call to the Prime Minister. Member for McEwen is warned. Prime Minister has the call.
I'm asked about statements by the US President, and I recall on the 5th of May 2025 he said this: Albanese I'm very friendly with. He's very good. He's a friend of mine. I can only say that he's been very, very nice to me, very respectful to me. And, you know, we've had a very good relationship. I have no idea who the other person is that ran against him. And you'll recall that during the campaign, when it came to tariffs, the former Leader of the Opposition said that he would be able to fix it and that there would be no problem. The truth is that no country in the world has a lower tariff than Australia has right now of 10%. And the arrangements that have been put in place are all at least that, but in most cases have, of course, been higher, 15, 25, some substantially higher. What we will do is to continue to engage in Australia's national interest, to advocate to get the best outcome possible with the United States. But I have said very clearly that tariffs are an imposition of a higher cost by the country on itself that imposes them. That is what is happening. Americans are still importing goods from the global community. They're just paying more for them, which is why I argue that tariffs are an act of economic self-harm, and which is why Australia hasn't reciprocated with tariffs. Of course, Australia has a free trade agreement with the United States. We impose zero tariffs on them. That is our ideal. But the President of the United States has made it very clear, with statements including that tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language, that is not his position. We'll continue to argue our case. Those opposite will continue to argue against Australia's interests.
Give a call to the Honourable Member for Gorton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to make medicines cheaper for all Australians?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the NDIS.
Well, congratulations to the member for Gorton for her election, her first question, and we're really looking forward to her first speech later today, Mr Speaker. She knows that our promise to strengthen Medicare rested on 4 pillars: more bulk billing, more doctors and nurses, more urgent care clinics and cheaper medicines, Mr Speaker, because making medicines cheaper is not just good for the hip pocket, as important as that is, it's also good for your health, Mr Speaker. When we came to government 3 years ago, the Bureau of Statistics told us that every year around 1 million Australians went without filling the scripts that their doctor had said was important for their health because of cost. Pharmacists were telling us of customers coming through their front door asking for advice about which script they really needed to fill and which they could go without. And that is why we have focused so strongly on making medicines cheaper, Mr Speaker. In just our first 3 months in government, we slashed the maximum amount that pensioners would pay for their medicines across a given year by 25%. That already has delivered 73 million additional free scripts, saving pensioners over $500 million. We then delivered the biggest cut to the cost of medicines in the history of the PBS, Mr Speaker, from $42.50 for a script down to $30. And already That has saved general patients $770 million in their hip pocket, Mr Speaker. We finally allowed doctors to issue 60-day scripts for common medicines that were taken on an ongoing basis. Already, that has saved Australian patients around $250 million and allowed them to avoid 35 million unnecessary trips to the pharmacist, Speaker. And this year, we froze the price of medicines. Pensioners will not see an increase in their medicine prices for the rest of this decade, Mr Speaker. And as a whole, those 4 measures have already saved patients $1.5 billion in medicines cost, Mr Speaker, but there's more. There's more, Mr Speaker, because this week I will introduce laws to deliver on the Prime Minister's promise he delivered at the Guild conference to make medicines even cheaper and to slash the maximum co-payment for general patients to just $25 a script, Mr Speaker. The last time it was that low was 2004. 21 years ago, Mr Speaker. More than 5 million patients will benefit from this 5th wave of cheaper medicines from this Prime Minister, Mr Speaker. It will be good for their hip pocket, but it will also be good for their health.
Call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Since coming to office, Labor has added $144 billion of debt, and the most recent budget says Australia will be in deficit for at least the next 10 years. Treasury has now advised the government that the only way it can fix its broken budget is by raising taxes on hard-working Australians. Last week, the Prime Minister refused to rule this out. Will the Prime Minister now rule out raising taxes on hard-working Australians?
Order. The Treasurer will cease interjecting. When the House comes to order, the Leader was heard in silence. So we're just going to make sure everyone's getting a good dose of respect today, and the Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Well, we've just been through an election with 2 alternative propositions. One on this side of the House, giving tax cuts to every single Australian taxpayer, all 14 million of them, building on the tax cuts that we introduced and implemented from July 1 last year, making a saving of around about $50 for people out there, average workers, making a difference. Not just representing people who are members of parliament, representing the people who are in our constituencies. And when we made that announcement, those opposite, I well recall, saying that they would roll it back. Absolutely, they would roll it back. I well remember that. So we thought, when the Treasurer came to the budget in March of this year with a proposition for not 1 but 2 tax cuts over the next this term now of government, we thought, well, they'll just wave it through. They'll wave it through. They won't commit the same position that they did last time, which was to say they opposed it before they knew what it was. Then they said they'd roll it back, and then they said we should have an early election on it. But sure enough, as night follows day, we overestimated them. Because what they did was they said that they were opposed to it, they then voted against it, and then they said they would introduce legislation into this parliament during this term to increase taxation for all 14 million Australians. But it takes some credit, given the question also asks about debt as well as taxation. They actually not only had a plan to increase taxation, they had a plan to increase the deficit over 2 years as well. Creative, if nothing else, are those opposite.
Order.
We have reduced the debt by $177 billion. We produced 2 budget surpluses and a reduced deficit in the current year and for the years.
Prime Minister will pause. Order. The Treasurer, the Leader of the Opposition, is entitled to raise 1 point of order, and she's going to do that now.
Mr Speaker, my point of order is on relevance. There was a direct question. Will the Prime Minister now rule out raising taxes on hard-working Australians? Will you, Prime Minister?
The question contained quite a bit of information before that part of the question, and I understand we had that debate last week about short answers and short questions, but this one, when you add extra things in, obviously the Prime Minister is giving context with his answer about that. He's got 30 seconds remaining, and he'll need to be directly relevant to the question he was asked about.
Less debt and lower taxes on this side of the House. More debt and higher taxes on that side of the House. They've got a private members' bill to wipe out every bit of emissions policy going back to John Howard in the year 2000. Will they introduce a private members' bill to increase the income tax for all 14 million Australians? I await for one of their backbenchers to do that, because that's what they all went to the election on May 3rd promising.
The call to the honourable member for Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question to the Prime Minister. So, how is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare while easing the cost of living for Australians?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Moore for his question, and he certainly was good enough on May 3 to enter into this chamber, and he gave a cracker of a first speech, and I'd encourage people to have a look at his speech, in which he outlined the path from being a Sparky to going to do law so he could represent the members that he did his apprenticeship with and the people in that profession. An honourable career path that has brought him here to this House. Now, one of the reasons why he's in this House is because of our cheaper medicines policy. Our government is making medicines even cheaper for all Australians. In the last term, we promised to bring down the cost of a pharmaceutical benefit scheme script from $42.50 down to $30. We promised it and we delivered it. This was the first reduction in the cost of medicines in 8 decades. 8 decades. But we knew there was more to do. So we're reducing the cost again. A PBS script will cost just $25, the same cost that it was in 2004, more than 20 years ago. Now, there's an old saying, nothing comes down in price. Well, this is coming down in price. Not just that, but we've frozen the costs of scripts for pensioners and concession card holders to just $7.70, not just for this term, but for the end of the decade. Real cost of living relief, taking pressure off Australians and backing in Medicare for the future, just like we committed to do. It comes on top of our record of delivering to strengthen Medicare. $8.5 billion to expand bulk billing. Promised 50 Medicare urgent care clinics before the last election. We delivered 87, and we're going to deliver another 50. And more than 1.5 million Australians have visited an urgent care clinic. 60-day scripts. They said all the pharmacies would be shut everywhere. It's amazing. It's amazing that they're still open. It's amazing they're still open. And of course, next year, 1-800 Medicare.
Opposition business and the member for Moncrief.
You know, you only have to poke that bear by talking about Medicare, and that gets him excited. That gets him excited. Nothing makes him angrier than the support for universal health care that those on this side show. We said we'd strengthen Medicare, we created it, and that's precisely what we are doing.
The call to the honourable member for Kooyong.
Question is for the Education Minister. Minister, the legislation we are set to pass this week will cut HECS debt for 2.9 million Australians, which is fantastic. However, the legislation does not help current students undertaking law and arts degrees, whose fees were massively inflated by Scott Morrison's Job Ready graduate scheme. I've put forward an amendment to this bill which would scrap Job Ready graduates. Will the government accept my amendment so we can get rid of the scheme tomorrow?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Kooyong for a question? Probably the best member for Kooyong the parliament has ever had. Bit of support up there in the public gallery.
Order.
Thank you for your focus on education and your focus on fairness, and also thank you for your support for the legislation to cut student debt by 20%. 20% is a big cut. It's not as big as 33%. That's how much the Australian people cut the number of Liberal MPs in the chamber at the election. But 20% is still a big cut.
Order.
And it's going to help a lot of Australians. 3 million Australians will get their student debt cut when this legislation passes the parliament. Mr Speaker, the truth is we've got a good education system, but it can be a lot better and can be a lot fairer, and that's what the Universities Accord report is all about. It's a blueprint for reforming our higher education system over the next decade and beyond. The Job Ready Graduate Scheme that you refer to in your question is the subject of recommendations in that report. We've already begun the task of implementing that report. I think we've bitten off a big chunk of it already, about 31 of the 47 recommendations in part or in full. That includes paid prac and the Australian Tertiary Education Commission that began this month. It also includes measures in the bill that we're debating this week in the parliament to fix the repayment system for HECS, something that Bruce Chapman, the architect of HECS, described as the most important change to the system in 35 years. Now, there's more work to do. We'll keep working through the recommendations in the Universities Accord report and take advice from the Tertiary Education Commission as well.
Call to the member for Whitlam.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government continuing to help ease the cost of living for Australians while managing the budget in a responsible way?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I congratulate the member for Whitlam on her first speech today, also on her stunning victory in her part of the world. We're all looking forward to working with you as you represent the people of the coast there and inland, a wonderful part of Australia. Now, the people of Australia on the 3rd of May, they voted for cost of living relief and they voted for responsible economic management, and that's exactly what they're getting from this Albanese Labor government. Now, this week we're introducing new legislation to make medicines cheaper. I pay tribute to the Health Minister, the member for Doyle, the Prime Minister and others who are making this a reality. We're putting cheaper medicines into the parliament. We're making cheaper medicines law, and this will make a tangible difference for millions of Australians, Mr Speaker. In total, it will save people more than $200 million each year. So it's more hip pocket help for those who need it in communities right around the country, and it builds on our record. As the Prime Minister said, in 2023 we delivered the biggest cut to the cost of medicines in the history of the PBS. Now we're slashing the price of medicines once again so that people will pay no more than $25 a script. 5.1 million Australians will benefit from the legislation that's introduced in this House this week, at the same time as pensioners, concession card holders continue to benefit from the $7.70 freeze until the end of the decade. Now, Mr Speaker, we have made a lot of progress together as Australians in our economy over the past few years. We've got inflation down, we've got real wages growing again, we've kept unemployment low, we've got the debt down, we've delivered a couple of surpluses and smaller deficits for the year just finished, Mr Speaker. But we know that even with all this progress we've made together, we know that Australians are still under pressure. We know the global environment is still uncertain. We know we've got structural issues in our economy to deal with as well. But cost of living relief is at the core of everything we do. It's the same when it comes to the legislation to protect penalty rates, slash student debt, the medicines policy we're introducing this week as well, the minimum wage, paid parental leave, the super guarantee, cheaper batteries, prac payments. All of this is about recognising that even though we've made that progress in the economy, there's more to do to help ease the cost of living, and that's what this legislation is all about. Same goes for the legislation we passed at the very end of the last term, Mr Speaker, to cut income taxes 2 more times, next year and the year after, in addition to the tax cuts from last year as well. Now, all of this help was at stake at the election just gone, Mr Speaker, but because the Albanese Labor government was re-elected, Australians will get cheaper medicines. That's what this week in the parliament is all about.
Before I call the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, I'll just draw to the attention, honourable members, the presence in the gallery of a parliamentary delegation from the Justice, Law and Human Rights Commission of the Parliament of Fiji. And I note in the Southern Gallery today we are joined by Mrs Louise Marcus, the former member for Macquarie and Greenway. Welcome to Parliament. Give the call to the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer. Under Labor, there has been 12 interest rate increases. Inflation remains too high. A 5% productivity collapse, a household recession, and the fastest fall in living standards on record. Yet the Treasurer has boasted about the unemployment rate. What does the Treasurer tell the Australian people now that the unemployment rate has spiked to its highest level in almost 3 years?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I say to the Australian people that unemployment is averaged lower than any other government in the last 50 years, Mr Speaker. That's what I say to the Australian people. If you compare every single government of the last half-century, Mr Speaker, the government led by this guy has overseen the lowest average unemployment of any of those governments for half a century, Mr Speaker. This is precisely why the people in front of the member for Fairfax are more excited about his promotion than the people behind him, Mr Speaker, because he bowls up these absolute dollies, Mr Speaker. He's doing his best to make the former Shadow Treasurer look good. Now, Mr Speaker, I'm asked about the progress that Australians have made in our economy, and I invite the Shadow Treasurer, I invite the House to cast their mind back to the day that we were elected in 2022. Interest rates were already going up. He forgot to mention that, Mr Speaker. Inflation was much higher and galloping. It had a 6 in front of it. It now has a 2 in front of it. We saw a substantial fall in living standards in the last quarter of those opposite. Mr Speaker, real wages had been going down, not by accident, but as a deliberate design feature of their economic policy, Mr Speaker. Now, we don't pretend that every challenge in our economy has been solved, but we do acknowledge that Australians together have made substantial and now sustained progress in our economy. Inflation has a 2 in front of it now. It had a 6 in front of it under those opposite. Real wages have been growing for 18 consecutive months under this government. Again, not by accident, but a deliberate design feature of our economic policy. Mr Speaker, living standards have turned around and are starting to grow again, recovering some of the losses that they made under those opposite, Mr Speaker. When we came to office, there were only deficits in the budget. We turned 2 of them into surpluses. When we came to office, there was $1 trillion in Liberal Party debt.
The Treasurer is just going to pause. I'm sorry to interrupt the Treasurer. We can't have that sort of interjection, member for Fairfax. 14 times you've interjected in one. I know it was your question, but we're just going to cool it for the remainder of this answer to assist the House so I can hear what the Treasurer is saying. He has the call.
Mr Speaker, and because of the progress we've made on the budget, not pretending that the work is done, but we have made progress, a couple of surpluses, a much smaller deficit this year, less debt than what we inherited for this year, saving on interest costs, all of the other progress that Australians have made together. And what that's meant is that we've been able to find room to help people with the cost of living, make their medicines cheaper, to cut their taxes 3 times, all of the other ways that we're helping Australians with the cost of living, Mr Speaker. Now, the Shadow Treasurer was asked on the 14th of July on 2GB what the main feedback was from the election, and he said he's been getting lots of feedback, and he said his feedback was that people liked their policies. Mr Speaker, well, that's news to me. Their policy was for higher taxes and bigger deficits. We've taken a different approach and we're making progress.
The call to the honourable member for McNamara.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting workers who rely on the safety net of minimum award wages, and what could place that safety net at risk?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for McNamara for his question and congratulate him on his big personal news. But also thank him for his commitment to helping some of our lowest paid workers. Of course, the government's #1 focus is delivering cost of living relief, and this is particularly true for our lowest paid workers, where we are committed to get wages moving again. Of course, in our previous term of government, our government made proudly submissions to the Fair Work Commission every single year to advocate for a wage rise for our lowest paid workers. And this year we made a submission calling for a real wage increase for the workers that rely on minimum and award wages. And from the 1st of July this year, almost 3 million of our lowest paid workers will receive a 3.5% wage increase, representing a real wage increase. Now, at the election, we also committed to protecting penalty rates. Last week, the government introduced legislation to do just that. So if you rely on penalty rates through the modern award safety net, that you work weekends, public holidays, early mornings, late nights, you deserve your wages to be protected. Now, of course, this includes people like Bernie, a youth worker, who said that as an essential worker, we give up our own family time because we come to work instead. Penalty rates provide better recognition for the complex work that we do. Or for Sarah Lee, a family therapist, receiving penalty rates means I'm compensated for the time I can't be with my family and means I get a better income so I can look after my family in other ways. That's what our legislation is about, protecting the wages of hard-working Australians. But, Mr Speaker, I'm asked about, are there any risks to protecting low-paid workers in Australia? And unfortunately there is. The risk is those opposite. It was disappointing to see the shadow minister out there fear-mongering about our commitment to protecting penalty rates. He is now describing our decisive action as disturbing and distressing. Well, I will tell him what is disturbing and distressing. It is the risk to workers like Bernie and Sarah Lee and the many others who rely on penalty and overtime rates. Well, while the opposition rails against our commitment to take swift action to protect penalty rates, we will get on with the job to ensure Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn.
Call to the Leader of the Nationals.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture. Can the minister confirm if the Inspector-General of Biosecurity's recommendations that import risk assessments should include the oversight of a scientific advisory panel were implemented in the decision to overturn US beef import bans? If not, why not?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the Nationals for that question. As the member opposite knows, this was a risk-based assessment done by the department on scientific evidence, and the department officials have gone through the process, and the report was popped up on the website last week. And as the member would know, Australia benefits from a two-way trade system. Australian beef going to the US is very significant indeed. And what I would say to the member opposite is that he should not be undermining Australia's biosecurity system. Our decision.
No, the minister's going to. The minister's going to pause. The member's was given a lot of courtesy in asking his question. I think it's only reasonable when the minister is providing detail to the House about the question she was asked. It is not acceptable just to be throwing loud interjections a metre from where the minister is standing. So, cool it down, and we're going to listen to the minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We have not compromised on biosecurity at all in any way, shape or form. And the member opposite would know, of course, we've had to put around $2 billion additional into biosecurity since we came to office because of the way they left our biosecurity system. The other thing I would say to the member opposite is, of course, he would be aware that this decision has been coming for some time. He would know all about the process that I have spoken about. He would know about the industry engagement that has occurred throughout this process. The other thing that he would know is that the US and Australia traceability systems are equivalent, and that the decision has been taken based on science around the US system and the Australian traceability system. And, of course, all food imported into Australia must be safe and compliant with our food standards. So this has been done on a scientific basis. The member opposite would know that the department's security assessment is done in the usual manner, as it is done for every other imports into this country.
The call to the honourable member for Bean.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its election commitments, including its commitment for cheaper home batteries? Is the government being asked to consider other policies?
Give a call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for the question. And we're delighted he's back, Mr Speaker, because he does a great job and he's got a lot more to do for the people of Bean and the people of Australia. Mr Speaker, the honourable member asked me about progress in implementing our policies, particularly the cheaper homes batteries policy, which turns 4 weeks old tomorrow. Mr Speaker, it's been implemented for 4 weeks tomorrow, and I think the House might like to know how many cheaper home batteries have been installed over those 4 weeks, and the answer is 15,325, Mr Speaker, over those 4 weeks. And where are they? Well, I do have some disappointing news for the member for Hume. He's been knocked off the leaderboard. His electorate is no longer leading New South Wales for the number of home batteries installed. It is now the member for Gilmore, Mr Speaker. Gilmore has had more batteries installed than any other electorate in New South Wales. But there is some good news for those opposite. In Victoria, it is Flinders, which has installed more batteries than any other. Big thumbs up for the member for Flinders. Thanks for the support of the policy. And in Queensland, Mr Speaker, what electorate in Queensland? Remember we said this was for the regions and for the outer suburbs, this policy. Well, it's the great electorate of Wright, Mr Speaker, has introduced more batteries installed over the last 4 weeks than any other. Those well-known woke warriors of Wright, Mr Speaker, getting behind the government's policies, and I'm sure the member for Wright joins in the member for Flinders in saying this is a great policy that's being implemented smoothly. Now, the member asked me, are we being asked to consider any other alternatives? And of course we are, and so is Australia, because the Coalition's #1 priority today, we saw it on the notice paper, we saw a big press conference outside, the member for New England introducing his anti-net zero bill. Our priority, cheaper medicines, lower HECS debt. Their priority, getting rid of net zero. Now, the other thing that's surprising about this process, about the member for New England introducing this legislation, it is he's preempted the review. The Coalition's having a big review of net zero. The National Party's appointed a very thorough independent reviewer in Senator Canavan. Now, who knows? Who knows what he might find? He's got to take submissions. He'll be taking submissions to the regions, presumably. This submission, somebody from the region said this: "It's my strong belief that rural and regional Australia has a lot to benefit from the move to net zero. I certainly hear that from farmers and my rural communities. I'm so excited for my rural communities and for the country, and as a whole for the future. I think that the net zero by 2050 aim is perfect," said the now Leader of the Opposition in 2021, Mr Speaker. That's what the Leader of the Opposition said in 2021. This is a reminder, when you have these reviews underway, appointing Senator Canavan to review net zero is a bit like putting Coldplay in charge of Kiss Cam. It doesn't necessarily lead to a happy marriage.
Order. When the House comes to order, we shall hear from the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. A short walk from the Minister's electorate office is Harbour Medical Services, where a patient notice was issued on the 1st of July stating, quote, "Due to increasing costs of running the practice, we must advise that the gap fee for private patients has increased. Full payment of account on the day is required." Isn't it the case that Australians both need their Medicare card and their credit card to get the health care they need under Labor?
Member will not use props. Order. 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 The member has asked her question in silence, And now we're going to listen to the Minister for Health, the Minister for Disability and the Minister for the NDIS.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, as you know, I love a question about bulk billing. I absolutely love it, and I've been waiting for one. We're more pleased to talk about bulk billing than maybe any other policy in Medicare, because for us, bulk billing has been at the beating heart of a system of universal health insurance generationally opposed by those opposite, Mr Speaker. And the Leader of the Opposition is right. When we came to government, it was in free fall. The Leader of the Opposition had a bit to do with that, as a health minister who never increased the Medicare rebate, as a health minister who extended the freeze from her predecessor for 4 long years. The Leader of the Opposition knows a bit about why bulk billing was dropping. But the record investment we made in 2023 did have the desired effect for bulk billing for concession card holders. It's back over 90%. But as we have said, it's continued to drop for people without a concession card. And that is why the Prime Minister made a commitment to extend bulk billing relief in November, not now, in November, to all patients, to every single Australian, Mr Speaker. Clinics are already telling us that they'll be moving to a full bulk billing model. Now, I've been a little puzzled by the coverage over the last couple of weeks, Mr Speaker, that, a quarter of clinics would not move to 100% bulk billing, as if that was some revelation. It was actually in our media release in February, because that was the modelling that the department put in place. But then I was even more puzzled at the opposition seizing on this as some great new deception by us, Mr Speaker, because it was their policy as well, Mr Speaker. And I'd imagined that the leadership group that got together when we announced the policy to consider whether or not they'd support it might have actually asked some questions, sitting around with their Peter Dutton for PM keep cups, might have asked a couple of questions about the policy they endorsed half an hour later, Mr Speaker.
The Minister's going to pause. I want to hear from the Manager of Opposition Business.
Direct relevance, Speaker. He wasn't asked about opposition policy, but if he wanted to get unpuzzled, he could read the notice at the Harbour Medical Services just near his electorate office about this.
The Minister was asked about patients and do they require their Medicare and credit card to have a doctor's services under Labor order. So that was the question he was asked. He'll need to refine his answer to make sure he's being directly relevant. He can do some compare and contrast. He has been on topic, but he's got a minute to go. He just simply can't use the remaining minute to talk about opposition policy because he wasn't asked about opposition policy.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm helping those opposite understand the policy they took to the last election, which will take effect on the 1st of November, and clinics will decide whether to take up the very generous offer we made and those opposite matched to extend bulk billing support to every single patient in the country. We're very confident in the modelling. They may not have bothered to look at it as they were considering whether or not to support our policy, but we're very confident about the modelling. 3/4 of clinics will move to full bulk billing. The rest will have something less than that. And when you add those two up together, we'll get to 90% bulk billing by the end of this decade. We're very confident. But what this has done, Mr Speaker, is cleared up whether the support they apparently gave to our policy was some road to Damascus conversion by Peter Dutton and by the now Leader of the Opposition who'd caused this problem in the first place, or whether it was a cynical political device. And this question clears that up forever.
Call to the honourable member for Blair.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Education. How is the Albanese Labor government helping young Australians with student debt? Why is delivering on this commitment so important, and what has been the response?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my friend the brilliant member for Blair for his question. Mr Speaker, young Australians don't always see something for them on the ballot paper when there's an election, but they did this year and they voted for it in their millions. The front page of the Courier Mail on the Monday after the election said it all. Albo's HEX appeal. The truth is, Mr Speaker, the legislation that we've now introduced into the parliament to cut student debt by 20% is going to help millions of young Australians, teachers, nurses, tradies and lots more. just out of TAFE, just out of university, just out of home, just getting started. It'll take a weight off their shoulders. This was one of the biggest promises that we made in the election campaign, cutting student debt by 20%. And it was also one of the biggest differences between us and the Liberal Party. They attacked it from day one. In fact, they didn't just attack it, they didn't just oppose it, they actually promised in the election campaign to increase HECS debt. In the costings they released on the Thursday before the election, they said that they would make people pay back paid prac. That's the funding that we're now providing to teaching students and nursing students, to midwifery students and social work students, to help them with the practical part of their university degree. Instead of providing that financial support for them in their pocket, the Liberal Party wanted to add that to their HECS debt. That was their policy. And, Mr Speaker, they're still attacking the policy to cut student debt by 20% today. A new MP in the chamber this morning called it grossly unfair. And he said, there you go, there you go, and he added this one. He said, there is no such thing as a free lunch. You've heard that before? That was actually your policy. Mr Speaker, Mr Speaker,
Order.
Mr Speaker, they mightn't have thought that cutting student debt by 20% was a good idea, but young people did. As one National Party MP told the Daily Telegraph after the election, quote, "My kids are paying off a university debt, and I reckon they voted Labor." Mr Speaker, when even your own family won't vote for you, you know you've got it wrong. And tomorrow the Coalition have a chance to get it right. They've got a chance to come in here and do what millions of Australians did on the 3rd of May and vote to cut student debt by 20%.
Order. The member for Forest will cease dejecting. We'll now hear from the member for Mackellar.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Prime Minister. I have been swamped by Mackellar people writing to me of their horror at the atrocities occurring in Gaza. I share their distress and their calls for Australia to use all diplomatic levers to end these atrocities. France will soon join 147 nations in recognising Palestine as a state in a step towards achieving peace in that area. As we witness the mass starvation and the killing of so many civilians and children in Gaza, when will Australia be prepared to recognise Palestine as a state?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Mackellar for her question, and I share the distress that people around the world would feel when they look at young Mohammed, 1 year old. He is not a threat to the State of Israel, nor is he someone who can be seen to be a fighter for Hamas. He's a young child who deserves to be treated appropriately. And the position of the Australian government is very clear, that every innocent life matters, every Israeli and every Palestinian. This conflict has stolen far too many innocent lives. Tens of thousands of civilians are dead. Children are starving. Gaza's in the grip of a humanitarian catastrophe, and Israel's denial of aid and the killing of civilians, including children seeking access to water and food, cannot be defended, nor can it be ignored. We have called upon Israel to comply immediately with its obligations under international law. We have also unequivocally condemned Hamas and said that it can play no role whatsoever in the future state of Palestine, and that hostages must be released immediately. I'll make 3 points about recognition. The first is that my government is committed to a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine. That has been a bipartisan position for a long period of time. Australia played a role in the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, and it's something we should be proud of. But what was envisaged was two states, not one. The second point I'd make is that the Foreign Minister announced last year that recognition of a Palestinian state by Australia might occur before the finalisation of a peace process. The third point is that the timing of our decision to recognise the state of Palestine will be determined by whether that decision advances the realisation of that objective. It must be more than a gesture. It must be something that's a part of a moving forward. And Australia will make that decision as a sovereign state. We obviously are in discussions with other countries as well going forward. We do that because the reason why a two-state solution remains the goal of the international community is because a just and lasting peace depends upon it. Prime Minister John Howard said that in 2006, that there can be no solution to the Middle East without solving the Palestinian question. And that means not just Israel's right to live in peace and security and to defend itself, it also means that the realisation of the legitimate aspiration of the Palestinian people to live in their own state with peace and security and the prospect of prosperity as well. I thank the member for her question.
The call to the honourable member for Aston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ensure working with children checks are fit for purpose?
The call to the honourable the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. She knows that the first priority of government is to keep Australians safe, especially our most vulnerable. And the recent reports of sexual abuse in childcare centres are horrifying. We know that its impacts have lifelong, highly damaging consequences for victims and survivors and their families. The Albanese government is committed to strengthening safeguards to give parents and the community the confidence that their children are safe in all settings. To support this, I am working with the states and territories to implement long overdue improvements to working with children checks. The facts are these. Different states and territories have inconsistent schemes covering eligibility and reportable conduct. They do not talk to each other, and there is no system of national oversight or real-time monitoring. A 2015 report of the Royal Commission into Child Sexual Abuse recommended strengthening this regime. It's been 10 years, Mr Speaker, and those recommendations have not been implemented. This has taken too long. We need meaningful change, and we need it urgently. It's time to stop predators exploiting cracks in the hodgepodge of separate systems around the country. I continue to engage with my state and territory counterparts, and I make clear that this is agenda item number 1 when I chair my first meeting of the Standing Council of Attorneys General next month. And I ask my colleagues to prioritise working together to enhance consistency of all requirements to do with information sharing across jurisdictions and to develop a national solution to support continuous monitoring and access to data. Mr Speaker, this is part of a broader suite of work the government is leading to prevent and respond to child sexual abuse. This includes work across jurisdictions by the Minister for Education to enhance safety outcomes in the early childhood education and care sector. And these efforts reflect the Albanese government's commitment to ensuring that every child and young person in Australia is safe from sexual abuse.
The call to the honourable member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister, or this guy. The Albanese Labor government decided not to deregister.
Order. The member's going to resume his seat. Yeah. I don't even know what that was, but I'll hear from the Leader of the House.
Speaker, on a point of order, there are times when abuses of the standing orders are by people who know it's an abuse and it's completely deliberate, and I put to you that this was one of those times.
Yeah. Order, Member for Latrobe. When we address each other, we address each other by titles, without descriptors. You know, it's just about showing a level of respect and decency. So the member's going to be called again. He won't use that sort of terminology when he's ever asking a question again. Otherwise, we'll just move to the next question. Member for Goldstein has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. The question is to the Prime Minister. The Albanese Labor government decided not to deregister the out-of-control CFMEU and instead appoint an administrator. Now CFMEU union boss Michael Crosby has called on his union to break into the New South Wales residential building sector, saying, quote, "The builders who are going to get the state government money are not our builders. The challenge for us is we've got to get into that non-union sector." Will the CFMEU's plan to unionise the New South Wales residential housing sector increase prices or decrease prices?
The Prime Minister has the call.
I thank the member for his question. We on this side of the House are the only political party in here that actually took action against the CFMEU construction branch. Those opposite presided over 10 years of growth in the power of John Setka in the CFMEU construction branch. 3 weeks after I became leader of the Labor Party in 2019, I kicked John Setka out of the Labor Party. And during the last term, we took action. The member for Forest
and the member for Fisher are going to cease interjecting. It's just not appropriate. Just show some decorum.
And during the last term, Mr Speaker, we took action to remove the power of people who had gone, someone like John Setka, who had gone from controlling the Victorian branch to then controlling the South Australian branch de facto as well, had increased his power in the union. In the Labor movement, the construction branch of the
The Prime Minister concluded his answer. Order. 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 The manager will cease interjecting. Order. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for McEwen.
My question is to the Minister for Small Business. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to ensure small businesses thrive as a key driver of jobs and innovation?
Call to the Minister for International Development, the Minister for Small Business and the Minister for Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for McEwen for his question and welcome him back to this place to continue serving the people of McEwen. Mr Speaker, small businesses are in every town and every city right across the country. They're your local Indian grocer, your hairdresser, your carer, your cleaner, your dentist, your Sparky, your caterer and the place you go to get your best kebab or banh mi. And they're not just the engine room of our economy, they are indeed the heart of our communities. They sponsor kids' sporting teams, they support local jobs and they help communities recover from disasters. I'm pleased to report to the House, Mr Speaker, that since we first came into office in 2022 under this Albanese Labor government, there are now more than 800,000 new small businesses. They employ more than 5 million people. They contribute more than $590 billion to our economy. And in our first term, we set out the key priorities for small business, to ease the pressure on them, to support small businesses to grow, to level the playing field. We delivered over $2 billion in targeted supports for small businesses. And we released the very first National Small Business Strategy. We extended the instant asset write-off and we provided energy bill relief to small businesses. And this term we're going to continue to build on that record, Mr Speaker. We're going to further extend the instant asset write-off so that small businesses can invest in the equipment that they need to sustain and to grow. And we've committed to tax cuts that will benefit 1.5 million sole traders. And we'll continue to work with state and territories to implement the small business strategy. Now, I want to report to the House, Mr Speaker, that last week I hosted a small business economic roundtable here at Parliament House. And I charged those present to be bold and assertive in the recommendations that they will give us to help us guide our reform agenda. I asked them to consider and to bring forth ideas and solutions for both incremental and for structural change to ensure that small businesses are considered not as an afterthought but at the heart of our decision-making, as one of the participants put it, built in, not bolted on. Now, I've heard from small businesses and their representatives across a diversity of sectors: manufacturing, hospitality, building, farming, retail. And though they're diverse, their message is loud and clear. Small business matters, economically and socially. They're the keys that unlock a future made in Australia, for Australia and by Australians. And this government will continue to back them, just as they back Australia.
Give the call to the member for Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for the Environment. The Great Southern Reef stretches from Western Australia across the southern states to New South Wales. It has more unique biodiversity than the Great Barrier Reef, but receives just a fraction of the federal funding. With the algal bloom catastrophe in South Australia, will the government commit to properly funding monitoring of the Great Southern Reef?
The call to the Leader of the House representing the Minister for the Environment.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Mayo for the question, and also for her whole time here in the Parliament has been an absolute champion of that coastline, including beautiful Kangaroo Island in her electorate. And I think the member's right to say that the Great Southern Reef, people will know the Great Barrier Reef on the east coast, people will know Ningaloo Reef on the west coast, but the Great Southern Reef, you're going all the way from New South Wales, between Tasmania and around Victoria, South Australia and WA. You're talking about 8,000 kilometres, the size of this reef. And there's been understandably a focus on it right now because of the algal bloom. If you think of that distance being a reef of some 8,000 kilometres, the algal bloom is 4,400 kilometres. So the size of what's going on is extraordinary. As the member's aware, and I'll go to monitoring in a minute, but as the member's aware, the Environment Minister has committed $14 million together with South Australia to make sure that we are helping South Australia in particular, which has been so horrifically hit by this algal bloom. And you think of people walking along the beaches in South Australia, like the great joy, what would normally be the happiest part of their day, has become the most depressing, seeing the death of marine life along those beaches. There is significant research and conservation projects which do touch on the Great Southern Reef. The projects that I'll go through, they're not limited to it, but a whole lot of their work is within the Great Southern Reef. So, for example, there's $24.5 million, which goes most of the sites for this on handfish, giant kelp and shellfish reef restoration projects. It's not purely the Great Southern Reef, but most of the sites within that program are the Great Southern Reef. Similarly, there is $5.5 million through the National Environmental Science Program and the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation for management effectiveness, knowledge gathering across those marine parks, in particular in temperate reefs. And the Bureau of Meteorology, together with the CSIRO, is also looking at having a marine heatwave forecast tool. People would be aware that the challenge here has been three things that have come all at once. We had from the Murray River a nutrient runoff of extraordinary proportions combined with a cold water upwelling and also a marine heatwave. So all of that has caused what we've been seeing by the best of scientific research so far. But the commitment that I certainly can give as well is that the Albanese government will continue to support the South Australian government to address what is horrific.
Give the call to the honourable member for Tangney.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Resources. How is the Albanese Labor government building a future make in Australia by supporting a strong and resilient resources sector? Thank you.
Give a call to the Minister for Northern Australia and the Minister for Resources.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And I thank the member for Tangney for his question. I want to congratulate him on his re-election in the wonderful seat of Tangney. As he knows, Australia's resources sector has been the bedrock of our nation's prosperity for decades. The sector underpins hundreds of thousands of jobs right across this great country and will be integral to a future made in Australia. Today, the iron ore industry is exporting well north of $100 billion a year of this commodity alone in the last year, and investment in new iron ore mines remains strong. Take, for instance, Mitsui's $8.4 billion investment in Rio Tinto's Rhodes Ridge iron ore project, which is a magnificent vote of confidence in the Pilbara. Now, Mitsui is one of Japan's premier global investment houses and has been a driver of Australia's iron ore industry since the 60s. And this $8 billion investment is the single largest investment Mitsui has ever made anywhere in the world in its nearly 80-year history. In the Pilbara, in the resources sector, and its importance cannot be underestimated and demonstrates the stable investment environment the policies of this Albanese Labor government are creating to ensure a future made in Australia. And in June, I attended the opening of Rio's $2 billion Western Ridge iron ore mine with Premier Cook, and that's, of course, a significant extension of the Chenna mine and builds on the important relationship between the Australia's resources sector and China's Bowen Group. And it says a great deal, Mr Speaker, of how disconnected the coalition is from our exceptional resources sector. They all lined up. They all lined up to have a crack at our largest trading relationship, while the CEOs of Rio Tinto, BHP, Fortescue and Hancock Prospecting lined up alongside this Prime Minister on a successful visit to China to support the ballast of our trading relationship, the great iron ore industry of the Pilbara that employs hundreds of thousands of Australians. Now, this blinkered and dense response of the coalition is the same one that saw them vote against the production tax credits for critical minerals.
The Minister will pause. The Minister has concluded her answer. The member for Wannon on a point of order.
Yeah, just a point of order, Mr Speaker. The question said nothing about alternatives, the coalition or anything like
so
that.
Your point of order is on relevance.
Relevance, it is, Speaker.
The Minister wasn't asked about alternative approaches. She wasn't asked about opposition policy. I'm going to draw her back to the question. If she continues her argument, she'll be sat down. The Minister, I'll just ask you to be directly relevant to the question you were asked.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Rare earths from Eneabba, another site I visited last week, will be mined and refined here in Australia, supported by the production tax credits that this government introduced in legislation and passed last term. And lithium is set also to benefit from production tax credits, which some have not agreed to. Liontown's Kathleen Valley Lithium Project, which I opened earlier this month, an hour from Leinster in the Northern Goldfields, is the world's first underground lithium mine. It is powered 80% by renewable energy and includes the largest wind turbines in the country. That's a lithium mine powered by renewable energy. So while this government will support such endeavour in clean energy, we see those of it, particularly led by former Deputy Prime Ministers, trying to scuttle the Leader of the Nationals as well as clean energy in this country.
The Minister's time has concluded. Give the call to order. Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper and give a shout-out to Blake Solly and the great Cody Walker, who were in the gallery today for question time.